All right, so let's dive into this. And why is this whole series significant? Well, let's go ahead. You can open up your first page there, and you'll see where it says "Find Your Fit" helps you to discover. And this is what we're going to work through. This is basically kind of the 4 weeks. We're going to do a little bit of a combo action on some of this, but the first week, which is tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about our talents. Next week, we'll talk a little. Well, actually, in 2 weeks, we'll talk about the spiritual gifts aspect. Then we're going to get into personality stuff, which will be like the Myers-Briggs test and the DISC profile. Both of those things have potential to really enlighten you. Then we're going to kind of conclude at the end with your values and passions, which will then give you this opportunity. As you begin to discover more about yourself and how God has made you and how God has wired you, and the things that you are interested in, then it gives you a golden opportunity in which then you can figure out how you are made to serve and where you ought to be serving and where you will find the greatest satisfaction in serving and where you will find the greatest purpose. Because here's the issue. Here's one of the issues that I think came up. It was one of the predominant things we did 3 or 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, that people were interested in talking about, and that was basically this: depression, self-worth, like those kinds of things. And here's the bottom line. A lot of people are very hopeless and depressed because they don't realize how worthwhile they are. They don't understand how God has uniquely made you, has uniquely made me. Right, James? So, as you begin to understand some of these things, then it becomes really pretty fascinating. One, I think you will find it very interesting. But two, you will begin to see how God has made you and what your purpose is, which will affect not only your friendships, it will affect your home life, it will affect your marriage, it will affect your job, and where you find the most joy and satisfaction in your job. Here's kind of the interesting thing. So we did this puzzle thing tonight, and it was interesting. I said, okay, we have a simple puzzle, 300 pieces, relatively easy to do, not overly complex, and I gave it to a group of about 50 or 60 people, thinking that wouldn't take too long. But what was interesting to watch is there are those that think a puzzle is really cool. They dive right in. There are some that don't think puzzles are really that cool because they're irritating or frustrating or whatever the case. They check out. There are some that go, I'd rather just hang out and talk because I'm that relational kind of person. There are some that want to sit there and go, okay, I want to figure out how that thing works. And they would sit there and analyze it, and they try to put, like, some jump in and they want to do the edge. Others are like, no, I'm looking for all the different colors. And so they try to figure out the colors. What's interesting then is as you really look around the room, you go, okay, that makes sense. Because I know that each of you are wired differently. Was it wrong that you checked out and just talked? Well, there could be wrong reasons, but not necessarily. Maybe it's just the way you're wired is you just don't like to solve things. You'd rather sit and talk. That's okay. In the right context, of course. I gave you lots of freedom in which to talk. Now, if you start talking when I'm talking, we're going to have issues. But you get the idea. And so that's what we're going to kind of talk through a little bit tonight is some of our talents. But I want to first take a look at this, Psalm 139. Let's take a look. Everybody turn to Psalm 139 if you have it. If you don't, I'll even allow you to look at it on your phone if that's what you're looking at. If you're looking at something else, then we will stare at you evilly. But let's look at Psalm 139 real quick, all right? Psalm 139 and Jeremiah 29. Psalm 139 says this, and I flipped the page already here. Psalm 139, verse 14 in particular, really the whole chapter is really dealing with this issue. But verse 14 says it this way. It says, you made all of the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Okay? Now I want you to get this, guys. Okay? Track with me. A lot of people get depressed, and a lot of people don't feel like they have much worth, and a lot of people don't feel like they're liked, and a lot of people go down the list of reasons and such and such. What they forget and what they don't understand, and the problem starts with this. They don't understand that God knit them together, gave them a purpose, and had a specific thing in mind, starting at when? When mom and dad got together and did the, you know. That's another series. We'll talk about that later. Most of you understand exactly what I'm talking about, though. But oftentimes you forget that when a married couple in love comes together and has what married people do, it creates things. That's a good thing. That's why you have babies. Babies are beautiful things, but people are beautiful things, and it started in the womb, that God formed them and knit them together. You had a purpose. You had a plan. God put you together for a reason. You are not an accident. Okay? I want you to seriously grasp that concept. You are not an accident. Because a lot of people get depressed because of this reason. They don't think they're worth anything. But if you come back to the truth of the issue, that God Almighty created you with a purpose, that changes everything. Take a look at Jeremiah 29:11 as well. Jeremiah 29, I'd encourage you to read the entire chapter, but verse 11 in particular says it this way. He says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." Again, you are not an accident. Okay? There was a plan. There was a purpose. You are not here by accident. Now, some of you may have go, well, my parents, I thought they were done, and surprise. Okay, even in that case where you go, surprise, you're not an accident, though. Okay? Now, if you need a lot of time to unpack that, we can do that later. But that's where we're going to start with this whole series, guys, because that really is what this is about. So here's some of the questions that I think really starts to kick off this series for us. What do you want to be when you grow up? Have you really spent time thinking about it? Seniors are probably starting to go, okay, I really need to figure this out. Because next year, you're going to start paying for those classes, and you're going to waste a whole lot of money. In fact, really what I should do is I should charge you for this class. Because I can save you thousands and thousands of dollars. And you think I'm joking. I'm not really. Some of you will take this seriously, and some of you will take it to heart, and some of you will really find this really interesting and helpful. And you'll save thousands of dollars of money. And in 5 or 10 years, you can take me out to dinner. But until then, I just want you to think about it and possibly think how God has made you. What can or will I do that will bring me the most satisfaction in life? I am fully convinced that God has made you with a purpose in mind. That has a specific job in mind. And that you will find the greatest satisfaction. In fact, here's an interesting thing to think about. Have you ever thought about heaven long enough? It's a long time, isn't it? For those of you that have chosen to accept Christ and follow Him and spend eternity in heaven, there's this idea that we get to spend eternity in worshiping God and yada. And we get this idea that worshiping God is like we're just going to sit on clouds and play instruments, and like that sounds really boring to me, frankly. Like if that's really what heaven is all about, I'm not so interested, frankly. Because like if you look at my personality profile, and I could show you, I have done a very expensive one. Musical expression is the bottom of the chart. So the idea of me going to heaven and playing instruments all day long for eternity sounds like hell. I mean, frankly. But here's the cool thing about it. I think if we get this idea that God has wired us with unique ways of expressing ourselves, and that if we could just begin to identify what those ways are, and that someday He's going to give me a job that like will just bring me the greatest joy and satisfaction doing that. Like that thrills me to think what heaven might be like. Like what would I get to do that would just be the ultimate dream job? Now, I'm wired a certain way, and so there were things I realized about myself that I was like, a youth pastor sounds pretty cool. There are things about myself that I could not stand the idea of monotony, sitting behind a desk, doing a lot of analytical data work. I realized that early on. I needed variety. I needed to be able to relate with people. I needed to be able to go outside. I needed to be able to go on trips and do adventurous kinds of things. Those were all things that played into my journey of following after God and realizing what He had for me. And I think every one of us, God has wired you with certain things and certain purposes and joys that you will find. So let's go on here. How has God wired me to serve? What is God's will for my life? That's always the big question for seniors. What's God's will for my life? What should I do? The easy answer to that is, well, He told us point blank, make disciples. It really doesn't matter what you do for a job as long as you're making disciples. It really doesn't even matter if you go to school or not, as long as you're making disciples. Now, your parents in the law may have another twist on that, but Jesus gave us one command, make disciples. It doesn't matter what else you're doing to make money. So what's God's will for my life? Well, that's pretty easy, honestly. But here's the thing now we're going to kind of take a look at tonight is our interests and talents. And so there's really 6 different things, and the easiest way to probably go to this right now, you can see each one kind of broken down over the next 6 pages or so. But here's the thing that you look at tonight, and we're going to break up into groups here in a second, and here's how we're going to break up into groups. We're going to see if you can identify which of these characteristics you are. So as you see, let's just kind of talk through just briefly the realistics. Now, we're going to kind of go through it, and honestly, you're going to get to take these home if you want. And so you could actually read through this and discover more about yourself. And if you honestly wanted to, you could even go ahead and do the spiritual gifts thing. You could even do the personality thing. And trust me, those personality things, that's worth money there. That's worth real money, actually. And that we'll talk about it when we get there. But for tonight, let's just start with looking at talents. Things that you like to do well or like doing. Realistics, if you see those guys are, let's see, where are they here? Now I got to crisscross which ones they are here. It's the last one, of course. Yes, so it's the basketball kind of person there that you see. The realistics, those are the sports guys, the hunting, the fishing, the camping, the whitewater rafting, training, raising animals, working with or operating cars, boats, planes, that kind of thing. Generally, they're the ones that kind of like to do stuff. They might seem kind of cool in crisis. They might be apt to take on the physical risks. But they oftentimes hate to be the kind of the center of attention. So now you might read that and kind of see if that sounds like you or not. People might see you as reliable, outdoorsy, athletic, mechanical, hands-on. Typical career interests could be things like engineer, forestry, race car driver, pilot, athletic trainer, animal trainer, those kinds of things. Your heroes might be, if you remember Tool Time, like Tim, the Tool Man Taylor. That's just kind of old now, I guess, actually, you think about it. But Indiana Jones, there's a good realistic, yeah, everyone likes that. So also, though, let's move on to the investigatives. So the investigatives, that's that person that they like to kind of design the things. They're independent, self-motivated. They're absorbed by their interests. Oftentimes original, creative, scholarly, intellectual. You know, those are those people that kind of like to figure things out kind of thing. They tend to be kind of maybe the bookworm. They like scientific research, computer programming, some of those kind of things. They might come across as like really curious or independent, intellectual. They tend to they'll spend their money on like books and stuff, or as you see, there's like potential career interests might be like a chemist or a doctor, psychologist, science teacher, those kind of things. So if you look at then artistics, which is right across the page there, artistics, they're much more creative. They're much more imaginative. They tend to be very free-spirited. They're kind of like, just kind of the wandering gypsy kind of thing, They tend to be very expressive, very sensitive at times. Oftentimes just real flexible, unstructured even. Like sometimes you have to get a artistic person to sit down and pay attention because they struggle with that. They like to perform or act or paint or sculpt, or they like photography. People may see him as like nonconformist. They may see him as creative or musical. Artistics will tend to spend money going to like theaters or art supplies or like freaky clothing or maybe unique clothing, if you don't want to call freaky. Potential career interests might be like an artist or a musician. Could be public relations director. Could even be, they say, potentially a pastor. Your heroes would be guys like George Lucas or Ansel Adams, who's a photographer, some of those guys. So that's an artistic. A social then, if you turn the page there. Socials, those are the friendly, the cheerful. They're concerned about the welfare of others. They are very kind. They're very generous. They're very ready to listen. They tend to be very tactful. The things a social person would be is organizing parties, traveling with friends, volunteer work, possibly even being a foreign exchange student, because I think that'd be really cool to go get to know somebody in another country. People may see you as very helpful, cooperative, friendly, kind, a good listener. You might spend money on like going out with friends, just hobbies that let you get to be with other people. The socials would be the people that, nah, that's a puzzle. I don't want to do that. I want to sit over here in the corner and talk. That'd be a social. Your heroes are people like Mother Teresa and some of those kind of things. People that are social, though, they tend to get in trouble for what? Jabbering, talking, passing notes during class, talking when the youth pastor's talking. Those are the socials. So, enterprisers. And so here you get into enterprisers. They're the adventurous, ambitious, the witty, the talkative, the optimistic, full of energy, impressed with status and possessions. Things they think about are probably being president. Not really like just president of anything. They want to be president of like the country. Those are enterprisers. They want to be the CEO of a company. People see you as persuasive, self-confident, extroverted oftentimes, a risk taker. Typical career interests might be sales, management, marketing, lobbyist, financial planner, politician. Your heroes are guys like Bill Gates, or Bill Gates was the head of Microsoft. Made so much money that he decided to retire and basically give away $52 billion. You think that's a enterpriser. So, and then conventionals, they're the neat, the accurate, the pragmatic, the methodical. They're very contained and contented. Conventionals they think about collecting anything. They like to go sightseeing and visit special sites. They're very orderly. They're very practical, efficient, content. Things you might spend money on, well, you don't really. You save it. Conventionals are the savers. And trust me, guys, this is where I'm not joking here, and you think I'm playing with you, but I'm really not. If you realize this about yourself and you get married, if you are a saver and you get married to a spender, you are going to have issues. And they are overcomable, but you have to understand that about each other. Okay? And we haven't even got into love languages yet, and that's a whole other deal, but love languages is pretty simple. But we'll talk about that. Heroes or typical career interests are account, banker, office manager, business education, a math teacher, because they want to sit there and figure out all the little dots. They want to sit there and go through every little step. That's the conventional. So here's what we're going to do tonight. And with the time we got left, we're going to break up. And here's what I want you to try to do. Now, you may get into your group and go, oh, no, I'm really not this person. I thought I was, but now that I look at it, I'm really not. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to divide up into 6 areas of the room, okay? So in leaders, if you can divide up accordingly, like if you know that you're this type of person and can go there, that will help, but I know that may not quite work out. So if you know you're that, then go there. Leaders, if it doesn't break out, then just jump to another group and try to figure it out. So next week we'll talk about spiritual gifts, but let's do this. For tonight, I want you to figure out which one you think you are. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to kind of sit and look at it and figure it out. Don't worry about if you get to the group and you go, oh, okay, no, that's really not me. That's okay. Tonight it's not that big a deal. But I think as you begin to discover more about yourself each week, this is going to get more and more interesting. And it's going to get more and more practical. And we're going to have more time to kind of talk through stuff that I think will really be helpful for you. So, let's do this. To make it easy, we'll just start with realistics in the right front corner. Realistics, right. Got it? So next would be investigatives over here by the door because they want to figure out what's going on outside. The artistics are probably going to sit back in the corner and stare at the computer. So artistics back over there. Then the socials, they're going to need a whole bunch of couches. So they're going to just sit around and talk with each other back there. The enterprisers, they're probably going to figure out how they can get out to the cash register and figure out how much money they can make for the church through the snack shack. And then the conventionals are just going to sit up here and stare at the dots and figure out why there's a pattern there. And then we'll kind of talk about it. So go ahead to those 4 corners or 6 corners, realistics, investigatives, artistics, socials, enterprisers, conventionals. And adults, if you can just divide up among I think we got 6 adults, don't we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay, we do. So adults, if you know you're not in one, that's okay. Go ahead and jump in one and